Everyone thinks the big Roth question is, should I convert? We're going to show you that's the easy part. The money's won or lost on how, when, and whose tax bill you're really trying to lower. And if this program leaves you wanting more, Label's new book, The 30-Day Roth Conversion Handbook, coming to Amazon, will walk you through all of this in much greater depth.
Welcome to Label on Fire with Amazon best-selling author and Yields for You portfolio manager, Label Sternbach. Label on Fire is supported by our ETFs, Yields for You Strategy A and Relative Strength Managed Volatility. Our mission is to help 1 million people retire with financial security. Now, the Financial Independence and Retirement Show dedicated to helping you build the life of your dreams as fast as possible with as little stress as possible. It's Label on Fire.
We're glad to be joined by Label Sternbach. And Label, I'm wondering, what made you decide to write this book now, especially now, after years of doing this work one client at a time?
Yeah, so, when I started Yields for You, and I got this on the wall, and when we were up at the New York Stock Exchange doing the closing bell, I had them put it behind me, right? They wanted to put my company name. I'm like, no, that's not what's important to me, right? It's not about the company. It's about helping 1 million people retire with financial security. That is our mission. And there's only so much that you can do one-on-one. And I have that. That's our mission statement. That's my reminder that what we're trying to do is help as many people as possible. And, I can meet with, I meet with hundreds of people every single year, one-on-one, helping them answer their questions and helping them make these decisions that are, for many of them, once in a lifetime, right? They can have real impact on their financial security, their wife, their spouses, their children's. And, after doing, hundreds of these conversations, probably thousands, I decided, hey, I should take the time and actually put this down in writing, take a person through kind of what I do with people one-on-one and the process of deciding, should I do a Roth conversion? How much should I do? When should I do it? Right. And how do you actually know if it's the right decision for you or not? And how aggressively to go about it? And what are the tricks that we use as a firm to help our clients get ahead?
Interesting. Everyone, we're talking with Label Sternbach. He's got a brand new book. And you've said many times on this program that, unfortunately, your father died at the age of 63 with no financial plan at all. How much of this book, if it does, traces back to then?
Yeah. So for anyone who's read any of my books, there's a lot of me and my story, in those books. And this book, is actually unique in that it has a lot of stories from all the clients I've helped over the years. But a lot of this goes back to my dad. When I'm writing these books, and I'm thinking, the thought that I have, right, is, my dad, he was working and he died penniless. Not only penniless, but he died in debt. He managed to rack up quite a bit of debt in the last year of his life. But, he knew better. He knew everything better, right? Like he at one point in his life, he was a mortgage broker and a financial advisor. And, he was a middle manager at Geico. He knew this stuff, right? And he still, even though he knew everything, and his wife, was a financial advisor, but he still didn't get the pieces in place. He still died without a plan. He still, there was a beneficiary form that he just never submitted to HR to update the beneficiaries on his retirement accounts, and ended up going to the wrong person. And if this is, what an educated person who, knows all the right things to do, if they still fail to create the plan properly, how much more so all the people who are doing this for the first time in their life, who have none of the education, who are trying to figure this out by themselves. And that's what I reminded myself every time that I, sit down to write and that I sit down to help someone, that these decisions that we make in this period of our life, right, when we stop, from the time that we're, a few years before we stop working until we, until we pass on and, pass our legacy on, right? But it's really those first few years of retirement that there's so many decisions that we got to make, that there really are no undos. And you need to have someone in your corner who's not only going to help educate you as to what the decisions are, but what are the consequences of the decision, so you can properly evaluate and decide what's right for you and your loved ones.
Interesting. So your dad, of course, is all through this book. I would imagine your many clients show up there too. What's the one mistake, if there is one, that you see most often that this book tries to stop before it even happens?
Yeah. So the one mistake, and the thing that anyone who's really talked to me for any period of time learns is, one of my lines I say is that in doing, the hundreds of these analysis, I've yet to be able to predict ahead of time what the right answer is for someone. And that really is the truth, right? Two people can come to me, both, on paper look exactly the same. But as soon as you start talking to them, you realize that what's important to one person isn't what's important to the other person. And the things that you need to prioritize are different. And so what this book really does is it walks you through answering the question that very few people answer of, should I actually do a Roth conversion, right? There's a lot of generic advice out there that says, yeah, you should do it, pay tax on the seed, not on the harvest, right? Give this tax-free legacy. But is that actually true? Right? When you actually run the numbers, is it the better choice for you to pay taxes now or later? Right? And if it is, how aggressively should you do that? Right? And how is it going to affect you downstream in terms of your cash flow and retirement and all the other things that it affects? And these are things that people really don't ask these difficult questions. And the purpose of this book is to help guide you through those difficult questions, and then help you identify what are the levers that you have to be able to accelerate your Roth conversions, so that if you know that you got to do Roth conversions, right? Well, okay, how do you do it in the way that you pay the least amount of taxes possible and provide the greatest benefit in your lifetime after you're gone to your spouse and your kids?
Interesting. That seems like that's one of the things that you want people to take away, their families. And I'm wondering, as you talk about this, I'm thinking, you said you sat down on purpose to write the book. Is there a story that you wrote but almost didn't make it to the book?
Usually those are the stories that are the best to put in there. So I'm usually, the ones that I may hesitate to put in are the ones that I try to make sure to put in, because they're the ones that are raw. They're the ones that really resonate with people and are the thing that are really expose these decisions of why you should do this. But some of them touch on a personal nature, right? Like sharing about my mother-in-law who was a victim of a romance scam, who you did everything right while she was alive, but in the last few years of her life lost everything. And there's stories, and there are stories where they exposed a lot of what people come to me for. There are two types of people who come to me. There's the people who are dying, and then there are the people who want to leave a legacy, and they care about their kids. And the people who come to me who are dying, I shared some of the stories in there of the decisions that we go through as a person is preparing to literally hand over their finances to their loved one, who, generally speaking, has not been involved in their finances, and how we secure that. And, because this book is about Roth conversions, we talk about it from that context, but these stories are very raw, right? They're very personal. And so there are definitely stories there that made me pause and question, do they belong in the book? How much of the story should I share? But there's a lot of very personal moments in there where we talk about, why are we doing this, right? Because that's ultimately, right? Like, you're doing a Roth conversion, but why are you doing it, right? And that drives everything.
I can hear that coming through your voice. I'm hearing a different label than I normally talking with you on each one of these shows. I got to ask you, how can we get the book? And is there anything special about this particular launch?
So the book is going to be on Amazon. We have, at the time we're recording this, I don't have a launch date, but if you go on our website, we'll have a form that you can get onto our launch list. We will, something that I saw another author do that I think I'm going to do as well, is we're going to, when we launch this, we'll probably do it for 99 cents. So you can basically get the book for free. And really, like, this book is your personal Roth conversion expert in a book. Now, in the age of AI, one of the things that we will be doing is we're going to roll out an AI with the book. So not only do you get the book, but if you don't want to read the book, you'll have an AI that you can talk to that will be able to guide you, grounded in my understanding, in my viewpoints, and with the tools that I use to help clients with these questions. So you're not just getting a book, you're kind of getting an AI financial advisor as well as part of it. So
wow. That's pretty incredible. The 30-day Roth Conversion Handbook coming to Amazon, and it's by our friend Label Sternbach. And I just this begs the question about Roth conversions and the mechanics of it. Should I even be doing a Roth conversion at this time, or is it right for me? How can someone like you, Label, help me to make that kind of decision and then go forward, or not?
So really, and this is what the book is about, right? The book is about helping you understand whether you should do a Roth conversion, and whether to do a Roth conversion. And then if you make the decision to do a Roth conversion, how do you do it in the best possible way? And when we say the best possible way, right, what we're talking about is, you've got different levers that you get to control. You get to control, what's on your tax return. You get to control when you do the Roth conversion. So how much you do this year, how much you do next year. And you got to really put these systems in place, right? You got to leverage the tax code. You got to leverage the markets. You got to leverage your tax return to make all of this right. And that's what we go through in the book, right? We help you figure out, okay, will I be in a higher tax bracket now or in the future? Will my spouse be in a higher tax bracket in the future? What will happen to my beneficiaries when they inherit this money? And how aggressively do I need to solve this problem? How many years do I have to solve this problem? And then what are the tools that I have at my disposal to make it so that I can accelerate this Roth conversion as quickly as possible without paying a ton of money in taxes, right? Like, anyone can tell you go convert everything all at once, but that's, that it's not smart, right? Like, as Warren Buffett says, right? In a rising tide lifts all ships. It's when the tide goes out that you get to see who's swimming naked, right? And it's kind of the same thing with Roth conversions, right? Anyone can tell you convert, right? It doesn't take a genius. The hard part is figuring out how to do it properly, how to do it in a way that is smart and efficient and pays the least amount of taxes both now and in the future.
We're talking with Label Sternbach, and I'm wondering, the IRS, we both know this, will force that money out of you no matter what, whether you need it right now. The question is how much, and how can you, what can you do in your 80s and 90s? How can you make those, not pay so much tax when you're so much older?
Yeah. So one of the calculators that we got on our website and we talk about in the book, right, is the reason why, the whole reason why we do Roth conversions is because the government forces us to take money out of our retirement accounts, right? When retirement accounts were first introduced, the concept of forcing people to take money out of these accounts didn't exist. And what people would do is they would save all this money, and then they would come retirement time and they would take out just what they needed to live off of. And then they would leave this massive inheritance to their kids or their grandkids. And it would be a step up in life, right? It would give them that down payment on the house, or give them the college tuition. It would give them a way forward and make the next generation better than the previous. Congress, because we're spending way more money than we are bringing in revenue, because we have so many more people on Social Security than people who are paying in, Congress needs ways to raise funds. And the way that they do that is by raising taxes and cutting spending. And when we're talking about raising taxes, the biggest pile of money that's sitting around not doing so much for, at least for Congress, it's doing a lot for the country because it's invested, but is your retirement dollars. And so they first started by requiring these required minimum distributions. And they say, okay, you got to take out money from these retirement accounts. You can't let it sit forever. And then, it starts at a reasonable rate. You're 4 or 5%, and you don't think about it. Most people don't think about it. But then what happens is you get into your 80s and 90s, and the formula that they use, that the IRS requires that you use for how much money you have to take out of your retirement accounts, that formula is designed to drain your accounts while you're still alive. Right. And so what ends up happening is your reasonable RMD when you were in your 70s and you were, okay, I just need an extra few $1,000s to supplement Social Security, all of a sudden becomes 20, 30, 50, 60. I've seen people who have 150, 250. I saw someone the other day that had $600,000 in RMDs because they had this money and it just kept growing and growing and they didn't need it. And so the reason to do Roth conversions, right? And you got to do it early, as the saying goes, right? You vote early, vote often, right? So when it comes to Roth conversions, right? You want to do it as early as possible. You want to do it as often as possible, but in a way that doesn't push you into a higher tax bracket or make you ultimately pay more taxes than you would while you're still alive.
It's interesting. What about, we talked about the high income earners. You talked about $600,000. What about that retiree with low income? Why am I in a higher bracket than I expected, they would say? And could my CDs be causing it?
Yeah. So one of the things that I have a whole chapter in the book dedicated to talking about this, these tax bombs in your retirement account. And it's not even your retirement account. It's your tax bombs on your tax return. And I had a lady the other day who I'm doing an analysis, and she's volunteering at the library. She's making like $12,000 a year or something. She's got her Social Security. I think her total income was like $35,000, $36,000, what she was getting from sources. She was barely spending that, right? Like the epitome of frugal, didn't really need any money. I think she was still putting away somehow she was managing to put away like $1,000 a month and only receiving like $3,500 between Social Security and her volunteer job. When I looked at her tax return, she had $140,000 of taxable income.
Wow.
And I was like, you should be paying maybe, a few $1,000s a year in taxes, maybe. But she was paying tens of thousands of dollars in taxes because she had all of this money, hundreds of thousands of dollars sitting in bank CDs and high yield savings accounts paying, 3-4% interest that was just skyrocketing. And then she had a brokerage account that was having short-term trading happening in it. And she had these dividend funds that were paying all these dividends. And she was like, I like the dividend funds. Yeah, well, dividend funds pay 8 and 9%, but they're not that tax efficient. And so again, right, you got to look at the tax bombs. I have a whole chapter in the book where we talk about how to disarm these tax bombs because, okay, great. You made the decision to do Roth conversions. You got to diffuse this bomb. But if you're diffusing it, right, and I have an example in the book of saying one person, right, where $40,000 conversion with the bombs, right, they're paying, 22% effective tax rate on the conversion. And without the bombs, it's 12%, right? Like, so you got to really decide, right? Do you want to pay full price or you want to pay half off, right? Like, and these are simple moves that you can make, but your financial advisor generally isn't going to talk to you about it if they even understand what's happening on your tax return, right? As an enrolled agent with IRS, right? Like, I've got the licensing and the education on the tax side. As I talk a lot about on the show, right? Taxes really, if you understand the tax code, it really drives all of the investment returns. It is the thing that will pay greater dividends than any kind of investment strategy you can do. Although there are definitely years where we make more money on investments, a lot more money on investments than you do on taxes, but it doesn't make a difference if you end up losing it all to higher tax brackets.
Interesting, everyone. We're talking with Label Sternbach. We're talking about Roth conversions. We're talking about his brand new book, The 30-Day Roth Conversion Handbook. Let's move over to talk about a little bit about the spouse, the heirs, and the decision-making questions that go along with it. And I'll do this first person. If I should die first, Label, will my wife really have to pay more tax on less income? And if that's the case, why is that happening?
Unfortunately, that is the state of how our tax code is written. It shouldn't be written that way, but that is the state of how it is. And the reason for that is that the tax code is really incentivized to encourage behaviors that we want to encourage. And so the behaviors we want to encourage, right? Good citizens are people who are married, have a white picket fence, and have 2.5 children and a dog, right? Like, this is what makes a good citizen. And so everything about the tax code is designed to encourage that. And one of the ways that we encourage people to get married and have kids is we give them tax credits. And so if you are single, you pay the highest, your tax brackets are the smallest, and you pay the highest proportionate rate of taxes. If you are married, you get to combine your tax brackets, right? And you get to pay less, and then you get deductions. And so when you have the gall to die before your spouse, and give them some peace and quiet for a few years, all of a sudden they're paying more taxes. And not only are they paying more taxes, but they lose the smaller Social Security check. Mm-hmm. So not only are they losing income, but they're paying a higher taxes. And the RMDs don't change. They still got to take out that same amount of money in RMDs, but now you're paying twice the amount of taxes on it, which, is a triple whammy, and is one that is totally unfair, but it is the world we live in.
It reminds me of The Price is Right with the double whammy. This is a triple whammy that's happening. So what about if I'm successful and my kids inherit my IRA? How much does the IRS take? We know it's going to be some, but what did the Secure Act change that might make this even better for my family, for my kids?
Well, so what happened, so it used to be, before the Secure Act, what used to be was you had something called a stretch IRA. So your retirement account was, you had to take distributions while you were still alive, and that was designed to drain your account while you're still alive. However, if a child inherited that retirement account, then, or whoever inherited, they would have to take distributions according to their lifespan. So if you gave it to your, 50-year-old child, okay, they are taking it, now over 40 years instead of your remaining 10 years, right? So the IRS was okay with that for the most part, right? Because they were still getting their money. But some people realize, a lot of people realize, well, what if I make my grandkids the beneficiaries of my retirement accounts? Now, all of a sudden, you have 5-year-olds and 10-year-olds who are inheriting, a $500,000 retirement account, stretching those RMDs over the next 70 years of their life, right? And what's happening, right? The IRS is getting a little tiny chunk. That little tiny chunk that they're taking out is not, is below the standard deduction. And so they're not collecting any taxes on this. Great for the economy, right? Because it's great for these kids because they're inheriting money. They're also being forced to spend this money or invest the money, but they now have a step up, because when these kids who inherited $500,000 when they were kids, and that money just kept growing tax-free, tax-deferred until they're older and an adult, right? By the time they're 20, that $500,000 is several million, and that several million, by the time they're retired, it's a nice chunk of change, tens of millions of dollars.
Right.
And IRS should have kept that, because I meet with so many people who they worked so hard their entire life to save. They forewent vacations. They didn't buy luxury. They chopped coupons and did everything to save every penny they could so that they could leave their children better off than they were. And they did it in the form of these retirement accounts. And now Congress has taken that away from them. All right. So what Congress did was said, instead of being able to stretch this over your grandkids' lifetime, we are now going to force you to, if you are a qualified beneficiary, you have 10 years to take that money out. If you're not qualified, then you have 5 years to take that money out. And now all of a sudden that $500,000 or a million or 2 million or 3 million, right? Let's use easy numbers, $1 million, $1 million. Now that has to come out. You still have to take the RMDs, but by year 10, that account has to be at zero. The people who are inheriting this are probably at their peak earning years, right? Your kids did well, right? You made sure they got a college education. You made sure they got a good job. You helped them buy a house, right? They're doing great, except they're also in a high tax bracket, right? They're probably making more money than you ever made in your lifetime. And so they're, 24% tax bracket, maybe 32% tax bracket, maybe really good jobs. And now all of a sudden you're going to dump on them another $1 million in taxable income. Well, guess what? The IRS is going to say thank you, and they're going to collect their 37 plus the 3.2% of Medicare surcharge tax and whatever else. And by the time you're done, the IRS has become the greatest beneficiary, the biggest beneficiary of your retirement accounts instead of your children. And so, who did you work hard for your entire life? You or your kids or the IRS for some Congress person to piss it away and blow Social Security.
So you've answered the question, who does the conversion actually pay off for? I guess the answer might be it depends, or is it for the kids? Is it for me, or is it for...
So the hard math, and it depends on how you're invested, right? So, and it depends on your age, right? So, and this is the weird thing, right? So I have two spectrums of people who come to me. I have people who come to me who are very conservative, and they're like, I've worked hard for this money. I want to make sure that it's there for me in retirement. I don't care about doubling my money anymore. I don't care about getting market-like growth. I just want to know that I'm not going to lose it, right? I want my 5-6% a year after fees, and I don't care about anything else, right? There's other people who are like, I know the market made me a fortune, it made me rich. I just want to be invested in the market. I'll ride the roller coaster. I just want to pay the least amount of tax as possible. Two very different people, because if you're growing at 5% a year, right? Well, your money is going to take quite a while to double. And so when you're talking about doing Roth conversions, it's probably going to take you about 20 years before you come out ahead from doing the Roth conversion, because you got to pay those taxes somehow, and that tax has got to come from somewhere. And because you're a savvy person, you have your money invested. So you got to really look at the cost of opportunity, the opportunity cost of having to pay that taxes up front versus letting it grow and then paying it as it happens, as those RMDs happen. And so generally speaking, it takes about 15 to 20 years for the more conservative investor to break even on, to come out ahead from doing that Roth conversion. But if you're fully invested in the market and you're just doing the S&P 500, right, you're getting your 10% average return, that's going to be a lot shorter time horizon, right? And so you doing a conversion during your lifetime, right? If you're invested aggressively, you might see that return very quickly, especially if you're younger, right? If you come to me in your, early 60s, well, you got a long time ahead of you, hopefully, right? So, you might have, 20, 30 years of retirement. That's a long time to see that compounding the tax-free return. You come to me in your 70s and your 80s, right? And you're conservative. I'm going to tell you, you're never going to see this in your lifetime. Maybe it'll save you $20,000, $30,000 in taxes, right? Maybe 100, 200. But, if you've got a whole lot of money, but it's really not about you, because that's nothing compared to your spouse, who's going to pay double in taxes. And whatever she's going to save or they're going to save is nothing compared to your beneficiaries, because your beneficiaries are going to have that 10 years. They're going to have to take it out all at once, probably 37%. Even if they did it over 10 years, right? You're saving that 40%, right? So now your choice really is, well, okay, am I going to pay 22, 24% on my Roth conversion so that I save them 37, 40%, right? Maybe more because of state taxes. Mm-hmm. And that number can often be in the millions compared to during your lifetime, which maybe is a few $100,000.
So last question, can I do this myself? And is the annuity that pays for my conversion tax really a good deal?
So let's break that up. Can you do annuity? Can you do Roth conversions yourself? Absolutely. Everyone's doing them, right? Lots of people are doing Roth conversions. The hard part is not doing the Roth conversion. The hard part is doing it in a way where you pay the least amount of taxes possible. And I'm going to give you one of the secrets in the book, right? And this is our secret sauce. The thing that we do for our clients that very few people are able to do is we look at the market and we time the market, right? You hear all the time, don't time the market, don't time the market. And for investing, yeah, you probably shouldn't time the market because it's better to just get in and ride it, right? What a dollar cost average in and have fun. Because timing when to buy, right, you're almost always going to be wrong. However, statistically speaking, we know that a 5% correction happens every 3.5 months. 10% correction happens every 18 months. 20% or greater correction happens every 3.5 years. This is clockwork discounts, right? Like all we need to do is like wait for the market to correct, which we know it's going to happen with regular frequency. And then we can save 5, 10, 20% on our Roth conversion, right? If you came to me and you know you're going to pay these taxes, even if you just did this for taking your RMDs, you're going to pay less in taxes. And so being able to set yourself up for success so that you're paying the least amount of taxes, converting as much as possible, right? That's, so can you do that yourself? Maybe, but to be able to really pull it off and to get the biggest bang for your buck, not really. It's not something that's very easy to pull off on yourself. It requires, you don't want to do index investing. You got to hold the underlying stocks of the index so that you have more surface area. And then, you got all kinds of other things, other technical details, because these conversions, right? Like we used to have an email list. We still have an email list where we send out alerts when a Roth conversion opportunities happen. When we're looking to see, we see the market starting to correct, we'll put people on notice of, hey, Roth conversion. But the last few alerts that we sent, by the time we sent it out and we execute our Roth conversions, the market already recovered. So if you're waiting for some kind of signal and you're not checking this every single day, you're going to miss the opportunities. So is this a do-it-yourself type of solution? Not really. You could, but I don't think you want to spend your retirement glued to the tickers and your brokerage account looking at the stocks go up and down. To answer the second question about annuities, which is a good question, you will see lots of annuities with these bonuses. I saw one the other day that had a 50% bonus. Right. So you put in $100 and your account balance went up, $150. And you're like, well, I want this free money, right? And there's lots of people out there hawking that, pay the taxes for your Roth conversion. The annuity will pay the taxes for your Roth conversion. It's very misleading. I have an entire appendix in the book where I go through breaking down exactly how these things work so that you can decide for yourself whether this is the right option. We don't sell annuities. We have no skin in the game. We just expose for you what exactly the deal with the devil you're making is. For most people, when they realize what exactly they're trading and what you're getting, because you're giving the insurance company dollars and you're getting back an IOU for something that you may never ever see something out of it that will be more than what you gave them. And that is a very tough pill for people to swallow. But if that is your deal, and there are some people who it very, very much makes sense for them to do it, then, absolutely it's the right choice. However, for probably 95% of the people I talk to who come to me with, what do you think about this annuity? And I'll help you shop it around. I'll help you find the best annuity that's the right thing for you. And I'll hook you up with someone to sell it. And I get nothing out of that other than, helping you better secure your finances and make the best decision possible. But very few people, by the time you go through it all and you have somebody who's not getting paid to sell it to you, who actually shows you how these things work, say that's the right deal for them. However, I did have someone the other day who his goal was he didn't want to leave any money to beneficiaries. His goal was for his money to go to charity when he died. And for him, doing an annuity gift, a gift annuity remainder trust was the right option, right? Where you get a paycheck while you're still alive, and then the remaining balance goes to the charity, and you get an upfront tax deduction, and he's using that to do Roth conversions, right? That's a deal that worked out for him, right? Doesn't work out for most people, but for his circumstances, it really made a difference.
That's so important because everyone's situation is different. That's why a financial advisor like yourself is so important. The name of the book is a 30-day Roth Conversion Handbook. Let's put a bow on this label. How can we find it? And tell us a little bit about whose money is this anyway?
Yeah. So you can find the book yieldsforyou.com, amazon.com. So it's available. It will be available on Amazon. We're going to have it up for pre-order by the time this podcast airs. So you'll be able to get it on Amazon, Kindle, print, whatever you want. Please leave a review. Reviews are really, really helpful for books. It helps us get the message out to more people. So please put out a book. And if you do review, and if you do purchase the book, book a meeting with us. More than happy to talk to you. Love talking to our readers and our fans and our audience. That you're the reason why we do all of this. So really take us up on that. In terms of, whose money is this that you're doing, right? That is the fundamental question of the book. The book, right, makes you face the question of why the hell are you doing Roth conversions? And how do you maximize it, right? Are you maximizing it for your lifetime? Are you maximizing it for your spouse? Are you maximizing it for your kids? Or maybe you want to give the money to charity, in which case there are other options, and we talk about them in the book. But really, you got to answer that question first, right? And it's the question that very few advisors are going to walk you through.
Label Sternbach, we got to leave it right there. Thank you so much, and congratulations on the new book coming out soon, the 30-day Roth Conversion Handbook. I'm Freddie Bell, and this is Label on Fire, and we'll see you next time.
If you would like to see how the Yields for You team can help you get off the Wall Street roller coaster and save you money on taxes so you can live the life of your dreams, book an appointment online at yieldsforyou.com or call 410-914-4894.
Yields for You is a registered investment advisor in the state of New York and only transacts business in states where the firm is properly registered or is excluded or exempted from registration requirements. Registration as an investment advisor is not an endorsement. Information presented on this program is believed to be factual and up to date, but we do not guarantee its accuracy, and it should not be regarded as a complete analysis of the subjects discussed. Discussion should not be construed as an offer to buy or sell or solicitation of any offer to buy or sell the investments mentioned. Annuity guarantees are subject to the claims paying ability of the issuing insurance company. Content should not be viewed as legal or tax advice. Always consult an attorney or tax professional regarding your specific legal or tax situation.